everybody. Welcome to another episode of Diplomatic Affairs. My name is Harriet Nate. Today, Norway is on our radar as we explore bilateral relations between Norway and Ghana. With me is Her Excellency Ingrid Mollestad, who is the head of the Norwegian Embassy right here in Accra, to talk about what is happening when it comes to partnerships between the two countries and what is to be expected in the future. I am super excited, and I know you are too, because like I've said, I've been making so much noise about Norway. Finally, the day is here and we can't wait to share all there is with you. Stick and stay with us. I will be back right after this break. Welcome back to the only show that brings you happenings from the diplomatic community in Ghana, Africa, and the rest of the world. Indeed, we have been globe-trotting, but today we decided to bring you relations between Norway and Ghana. And of course, who best is the right person to speak with when it comes to bilateral relations or diplomatic ties between these two countries. Relations between the two countries have been phenomenal, very cordial. And with me is the ambassador herself to tell us what is happening. What is Norway doing in Ghana? I know you've been asking yourself that question. And of course, what is the relationship between Norway and Ghana like in terms of partnership? Her Excellency Ingrid Mollestad is our guest to tell us all there is to know when it comes to Norway and Ghana relations. Ambassador, you're welcome to Diplomatic Affairs. Finally, we are super excited to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Harriet, and thank you for inviting me to Diplomatic Affairs, for your interest in Norway-Ghana relationship. I'm really, really pleased to be here. And I didn't know I was making that much noise. That's a good thing, I guess. That's a good thing.
Yes, the people have been waiting for us to bring you on to our show to learn more about Ghana. So the interest is very much high. Let's talk about you before we delve into, other matters of interest. Beginning with you, let's get to know you more, your diplomatic journey.
Yes, I'd be delighted to tell you a little bit about that. I am a career diplomat by profession, meaning that I've been in the diplomatic service for Norway for more than 25 years now, actually.
More than 25?
Yes. And I do have a master's degree in international relations from Geneva, Switzerland. And after I finished that, after some work, I started in the diplomatic service. And I've been posted in many countries. And I've had several postings, obviously, also at home in Norway. So what can I say? It's the most exciting of professions. It opens up for so many interesting meetings, seeing so many different countries, working within politics, the economic world, trade, analysis. I've been working multilaterally with big United Nations processes and conventions. I have been working bilaterally in countries like Cuba. I was ambassador for 4 years, covering the entire Caribbean. I have been in Zimbabwe, I've been in Geneva on a posting. So yes, it is a wonderful profession, and one that is, it is your life in many ways.
It is your life in many ways. Affords you the opportunity to serve your country.
Exactly. The opportunity to serve my country and to make sure that the interests of my country are well looked after in, abroad, like in Ghana right now, and also in other West African countries that I cover. So I am the representative of my government in Ghana, and it is of course a huge responsibility, and my aim is to develop the relationship further. It's, as you said, it's an excellent one. It's a cordial one, but it could always go even further in terms of investment, friendships, development, projects, partnerships. So yes, that's my job, and I'm pretty proud of it, actually. And I'm happy to represent Norway.
We are happy to have you represent Norway. Indeed, I can tell you've been working. I've been following you on Twitter. You are very active on Twitter, updating us on happenings when it comes to your office in terms of relations between Norway and Ghana. Let's talk about Norway's foreign policy.
Yes.
On Ghana and
Ghana.
Africa.
Yes. Well, I'm very happy to talk about that. let me first of all say that Norway, I think, it's a small country, but
what's the population?
A bit more than 5 million.
So very small.
It's a small country, but I am glad that it's in a way also a visible country. And one of the reasons I think why we're visible on the international arena is that we have a very ambitious foreign policy, and we do have a very ambitious policy of international development. And to turn to Africa, we have 14 embassies on the African continent. We have contributed with massive development aid, and now we are turning our eyes on developing partnerships in terms of trade and investment. And the Norwegian government is, as we speak, developing a new partnership strategy for the African continent, because Africa is taking on more and more importance globally. With its peace and security, trade. I mean, we know all about the resources on the African continent. So there is so much potential, and I think that partnership and those friendships that go back so long, as I said, that is something that we can do even more about, which we are trying to do. So yes, solid relations, ambitious foreign policy, and I think I need to say also that Norway works. We are one of the few, in fact, one of the few countries in the world who are obtaining the international goal of 0.7% of our BNP towards development aid, and we are doing a lot of that multilaterally, which means that we are really partnering up with UNFPA, with UNICEF, with UNDP, with many of these big organizations that are also present here in Ghana and in the continent. And that is something that gives us something to lean on. We are interested in gender, developing women's rights everywhere. We have an interest in climate change, in sustainable management of resources. Well, you name it. I think we have really, we're not a big country, but I think that we are trying to leave a certain footprint, and I'm very proud that we have the ambition to do that.
I am happy about you talking about how ambitious your foreign policy is. The little I read from the internet when I was trying to fish for more information on Norway, I realized that Norway is all about peace and security within its region, and of course outside its region. So multilaterally, you are very active as well. I would want us to talk about, of course, Africa hosts more than 60% of the world resources, like you rightly mentioned. I would want us to talk about what you make of Ghana Beyond Aid.
Well, first of all, I think that you're rightly, and I think I mentioned it too, I mean, Africa has so many natural resources, and I think that President Nana Akufo-Addo has rightly been very clear about that there should be no reason to see the continent as a recipient of aid at the outset, right? And therefore, I think the vision of Ghana Beyond Aid is a laudable and very important one, and one that we very much support. And I think that in terms of the human capital, what you have, the resources that you have, the potential is so vast. So I think that we are here as Ghana's partners and trying to reach that potential. And I think that private sector development, investment in Ghana's private sector, well, in Ghana's and also other African countries, obviously, but in Ghana's private sector, that has to be the driver for development. And I'm very happy to see that the increased interest for Ghana and for West Africa. So that is something that I would just like to mention, because it's not something that a lot of people know.
But I didn't even know about this.
Well, there you go.
So here I am.
No, actually it's our most important mechanism for development of private sector. And I think when you mention Ghana Beyond Aid, this is exactly the kind of partnerships that we need. Not talking necessarily only about aid in the conventional sector, where Norway is not just a big partner for Ghana bilaterally, but development of the private sector is something that we hope to contribute to just to strengthen, for example, access to finance. This is what this fund is all about, is to give private sector access to financing, to expand businesses, and to develop businesses, further, create jobs, make them sustainable. And this is something that, and the access to capital is sometimes quite difficult.
Yes, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. So this is what we try to respond to with this mechanism. So I'm pretty proud of that too.
This is very important for viewers as well, because for me, it is the first time I am learning anything about the Norwegian Development Fund for the private sector. Now that we have defined relations between Norway and Ghana, moving away from aid to trade or partnering, can we look at some of the areas of partnership in terms of the relations between the two countries? Health, I know there is health. You mentioned agriculture, of course, under the Norwegian Development Fund for the private sector, West Africa.
Yes, with great pleasure. So you mentioned some of the areas. First of all, I'd just like to say that I think the principle for the Norwegian-Ghanaian partnership is in fact that we contribute within areas where we have strengths and where we think that Ghana could benefit from the partnership between the two countries. So that's why, for example, for a very long time, we've had cooperation in the area of maritime affairs, within the area of fisheries, and we have something that is called Fish for Development.
Fish for Development?
It's called Fish for Development, yes. Meaning that, when we're talking food security, how important protein is for the diet, and of course fish. And Ghana has rich resources, right? So we have for a period of time, for many years, and we are just renewing that partnership. We are cooperating with the Ghanaian authorities, the Fisheries Commission and the Ministry, to manage Ghana's fishery resources even more sustainably and more effectively. Because as you know, we are a big nation of fisheries, and a small nation, but a long coast with lots of marine resources. So that is something I think that we can bring to the table that is useful for Ghana. So there is a lot of cooperation going on in that area, with lots of back and forth between Ghanaian and Norwegian actors within that field. And I'm very happy to say that I think that even within developing aquaculture, I think that we can contribute, and we are doing so. We have for a long time had a cooperation within energy field. You know that we are also a producer of oil and gas, and Ghana has, of course, its own resources. Yes. So this is again something Norway has its own sovereign fund, its own legislation, petroleum legislation that goes back several decades, which I think is also probably quite progressive.
Yeah, there were a lot of expertise shared in that area when Ghana discovered oil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. And that has been going on with those exchanges between experts on the Norwegian and the Ghanaian side. So I think that is an area where we have contributed as well. And now, obviously, our attention, with the world, with the climate change, and the need to have a focus on renewable resources, we are focusing increasingly on renewable energy.
Yeah, clean energy,
which is also cheap energy, and which is also, of course, climate friendly. And that is something that recently we have seen a lot of interest in, but from also the private sector, but with support from Norfund that I mentioned. So last week, for example, the embassy invited to a conference on solar energy here in Ghana. And there were a lot of participants, both from the public and the private, because the secret is public-private partnerships, right? Yes. So there were a lot of participants, and I do hope that that's an area that in the future will develop.
Before you move on, let's talk about the solar energy recently that was, I think, commissioned in Techiman.
Oh yes,
yeah, because
that's one example.
Right.
That's one example of where Norwegian companies come in and contribute both with finance and expertise into Ghanaian, Ghana Nuts. It's a big business, big enterprise. That's an example of this cooperation. Very concretely, I was there last week. To
Yes.
commission this opening of a solar park. And Ghana Nuts is a big company. I think close to 3,000 employees.
Right, that's big.
Is
it a private company?
It's a private company.
It's a private company.
It's a private company, very innovative, very interesting company that I was privileged to get to know a bit better, and also visiting the region, Bono region, for the first time.
Did they have any support from No Fund though?
Yes, there is
Interesting.
also support that is part of this entire thing, Norwegian company. But
That's
we
okay.
were a number, 3 or 4 companies went up there together and opened this solar park that will, I think, make a huge difference for the company in terms of saving
Exactly.
and cutting their energy costs. And also, of course, then training locals to maintain the solar park. I'm very enthused about it, actually.
I am also very enthused about it. When I read, because I said I follow you keenly on Twitter just to keep abreast of information regarding your office, what it is that Norway is doing in Ghana. So when I saw this particular intervention or partnership, I was very excited. Now that's the kind of partnership we want to see. This translates into the lives of the ordinary people.
Yes, definitely.
3,000, employees.
Well,
Can you imagine?
Of course not, we haven't created those
No,
jobs.
exactly.
It's Ghana Nuts that does this job, but they are, thinking innovatively, and I think that actually developing solar energy, investing like they have done, and having partnerships with companies like Empower New Energy, the Norwegian company, is the future. Electricity, as I said, their cost is being cut, employments are being created, there are so many efficiencies, plus it's clean and climate friendly.
Yes.
So yes, I went up there, it was a real boost.
Very interesting. All right, I would have loved to stay on this particular subject regarding solar. Solar is the future. You are absolutely right. I can imagine what would happen if we are able to develop our solar capacity, as not just as a country, but a region and of course the continent, So now let's move away from climate change, clean energy. From that, you talked about agriculture. What is happening in that area? Let's talk about the practicals when it comes to what you're doing in the country, because you're always on the field doing something.
First of all is to get out there in the field to see how people live, right? And we all know how important agriculture is to Africa as a continent, both smallholder farmers, and I think the future of agribusiness is really, holds so much potential. And you mentioned women. Women so often do the farming, right? I mean, they do the hard work. We do the hard work.
Yes, we do.
And I have wanted, in a way, to see and to understand and to learn more about that sector. This is why you've seen maybe me traveling around a bit. And not only in Ghana, also, in some of the other countries where I work. Like
Sierra Leone. So you are accredited to Sierra Leone and which other country? 3
I am
countries?
To Côte d'Ivoire, to Guinea, to Liberia, to Senegal.
All right.
And yes, a couple of others as well. The entire coastline from Ghana up to including Senegal. Wow. So quite a few. And of course, agriculture being a big part of all of these economies. It's important to try and understand a bit more. It's also obviously related to food security.
Yeah.
So this is where, all of this is tied together. So what we are doing, we do not have huge investments as a government, but we are working very closely with some of the UN organizations. And we are also, our development agency, NORAD, has invested in quite a few organizations and NGOs. Like, for example, the Institute for Tropical Agriculture, that I think, again, to make the sector more productive, more sustainable, to make it a better living so that, everybody can benefit more from this. I think there needs also be the development of innovative mechanisms. So this is something that we do, and for example within the cocoa sector together with this institute, and also within different sectors. So I am. It's not exactly only the embassy that does the work, but different development partners like our agency NORAD, the UN that we work closely with, and some Ghanaian actors as well. So yes, I attach a lot of importance to trying to contribute to furthering the agriculture sector, as I said, smallholder farmers with better technologies and investing in that, and also in the future for women that are so important. So I think when you see these images of me, it's really also because I take a great personal interest in seeing that, getting out of Accra, getting off my high heels,
getting your hands dirty,
and getting my hands more or less dirty, but at least understanding. And
right.
Also through that, you can also develop, I think, better policies. But it's very important for the Norwegian government, and we have a new strategy for food security, which is based on self-reliance, believing that a continent like this one, where we are now, should not be relying to such an extent on imports, that there should be development of the sector here to be more self-reliant, to be more food secure. And Ghana is one of, I think, 5 or 6 partner countries that has been identified for the Norwegian government. So I think there is potential for working even closer with Ghana in the years to come to develop this sector.
This is very much exciting. Like I said, I'm all about the practicals. Most of the time when we talk about the missions, people their minds go straight to acquiring visas, getting visas, and those are things they look out for. But and in reality, there is more to it than what we know, on the outside. So I'm happy to continue my conversation on this particular subject. Agriculture is the backbone of every country. So when you talk about food security, it excites me. When I see you on the field working with these women, I know that it goes beyond just planting and, of course, harvesting. It's even giving them the technical assistance required.
Yes, I think that it's trying to understand and to bring elements to the table like innovation.
Yes.
And since we're talking about agriculture, when I was talking to the CEO of Ghana Nuts, for example, seeing how they think, you identify that there is a huge production of onions and that so much of that goes to waste, right? A lot of produce goes to waste.
Yes.
It's something that we don't always talk about or not, but a lot of agricultural produce is just being lost.
Yes.
And what they do then is that they actually make paste,
granite paste, and sort of
so that there can be like a continuous, they could buy continuously from the farmers, and not so much is lost, and they make a product that is useful for so many people. And that's the kind of thing I think reducing waste is very important in order to to fight food insecurity, which is I'm afraid not a new phenomenon, but that is with COVID. And of course, with the Russia-Ukraine war, we are feeling it even more.
Yes, the grains, for instance, is a big issue. The prices have soared. Things have become very expensive. Tomatoes, for instance, you talked about onions, going to waste and all of that, due to the fact that we are not able to store produce very well. We cannot talk about agriculture. Of course, the women who get their hands dirty on the field, doing most of the work, and not talk about women empowerment in other areas as well. The FGM, for instance, is a health issue, and I would want us to talk about that when it comes to the partnership in that area between Norway and Ghana.
Yes. Well, thank you. FGM, female genital mutilation, as you know, is an issue in this region, and particularly in Ghana, in some areas in the north, some pockets in the north. Some other West African countries, in some West African countries, it's an even bigger problem. But I have the opportunity to go to the northern parts of Ghana to Pusiga with UNFPA, and to interact with women and girls, and with men, also traditional leaders, with politicians, and to understand what they are doing to fight this phenomenon, because I think that it is a harmful practice.
It is.
It is affecting women's and girls' health, their possibility of living healthy lives. They risk complications during pregnancy and childbirth,
even deaths in some cases.
And even death in some cases. And it's actually quite dramatic. And for Norway then, it's something that I am very much engaged in personally as well, but for Norway it is in the context of sexual and reproductive health and rights of women, which is one of our global most important areas for engagement. And UNFPA, I think we are one of the biggest donors to UNFPA for these specific reasons. Well, let me first put it into the context of the Norwegian global engagement for women and girls, for sexual and reproductive health and rights. We think that those rights, women's health, is so important, of course for women themselves, but also for society as a whole. And for development as a whole. And you can't talk about women empowerment, women in politics, women in the private sector. You can't talk about any of these things without talking about the basics, which is women's right to have healthy bodies. And female genital mutilation is part of some of the traditional practices that are still going on in some pockets in Ghana, but even more so in some other West African countries. And I've had the opportunity to both talk to women and girls in Sierra Leone, in Senegal, but also in Pusiga in Ghana, where there is active policies against this practice. And what I said and what I like to say is that traditional practice, tradition is good.
Yes.
Initiation is good, but it should not be harmful to women's health or their own development.
Yeah, let's take the good ones, and the ones that are harmful to us, we need to discard them.
Yes, I think that we need to discard. I think that we need to speak up as women together against that, so that women don't have to take all of those risks. And have their bodies cut, and to have all of these risks during pregnancy, childbirth, sometimes even death. It's
maternal mortality is a serious issue.
Maternal mortality is a serious issue, even though I think Ghana has done a lot to prevent, and the statistics don't look bad at all. It's still, we can't forget that it's still happening, and we need to speak about it, because I think that there might even be forces that would want to, bring it back. So you can never stop talking about it. And this is why it's one of our big priorities globally for Norway, women's rights, and in particular then sexual and reproductive rights and health and rights. So back to women empowerment. Yes. We are supporting a program for improving the quality of midwifery in Ghana as well. So there is a lot of exchanges between Norwegian universities, Ghana universities, and we are now. I'm going a little bit, into other areas of this as well, and importance of women in the private sector, where we often talk about
leadership,
leadership positions, and I have been impressed to meet. In Ghana, is a place where you find so many powerful, strong women.
But we still have a long way to go when it comes to women in parliament, though. The numbers are not encouraging women in politics, and the numbers are not that encouraging. But I think in other areas, we've seen tremendous, improvements in some areas. So do we have anything in this? What's the situation like in Norway?
Well, in Norway, I would say that we still haven't reached where we should be, where we want to be. But I think it's still one of the world's probably countries where equality has come far. But we promoted, for example, 20 years ago, there was legislation adopted to get women into the boards of big companies, because that was somewhere where women were completely absent. And then the government just said, well,
we need to introduce a policy.
30% should be women. And there was like an uproar. There's so many protests coming that we will never find that many qualified women. This is only 20 years ago. But as it turns out, this was implemented, and now this is a fact of life. We never had that. We never had that kind of policy in terms of political representation. But there has been, in a way, I don't know, there has been established a practice, for example, for Norwegian political parties, that you need to have every other candidate needs to be a man and a woman. So you wouldn't get your lists accepted unless it was a man, woman, every other.
It needs to be well balanced.
So you wouldn't have a Norwegian government now that would not be 50-50.
Right.
Yeah. And you might know that Sierra Leone just adopted legislation.
Yes.
It's all over the news, and I think it's a very good example and a way to go to improve representation in politics. And politics is hard.
But yeah,
it's hard, I understand that there might be some reticence to go into politics because it's a complex arena, but I would hope that
we see more women in that area.
Hope so.
Yeah, we need to see more women in that area. Now, away from that, I've been asked to take a break, and that when we come back, we will touch on other areas of partnership when it comes to relations between Norway and Ghana. So I'm going to take a break. So yes, you're still watching Diplomatic Affairs. With me is the Norwegian Ambassador to Ghana, Her Excellency Ingrid Mollestad, talking to us about the beautiful relations between Norway and Ghana, the partnership in the various areas that we have identified. And of course, we are sharing very, very important information on the show as well. So I will take a break, and when I come back, we will continue with our conversation.
In previous seasons, you saw this.
You are not allowed to hawk or preach in commercial vehicles.
The perception in Ghana is abortion is illegal, and we don't follow up with the exceptions.
The existence of the customary marriage is no prerequisite
for the ordinance
marriage.
Yes. And now, are you ready for this?
Some people express the fact that they don't go on leave with pride.
Accumulated leave, like they term it, is illegal.
Because in Ghana we don't have enough lawyers, and the accused can apply for bail where he has no lawyer.
Knowing full well that you have an STI and you do not reveal that to the person and you have the sexual contact with the person, it is also part of domestic violence.
Join the Law Express panel for relevant, informative, and educative topics.
It is clear that if the court grants bail, it is the registrar of the court that has the power to deal with execution of the bail.
All matrimonial properties that are sold without the consent of the other party are actually null and void.
Welcome back. You're still watching the only show that projects happenings in the world of diplomacy and international relations. On our radar today is Norway, and of course we have the presence of the ambassador of Norway to Ghana, telling us the relations between Ghana and Norway, or Norway and Ghana. So we've touched on health, we've done women empowerment, we've touched on food security, climate change, and we continue with our conversation conversation. Let's talk about some of the high-level visits and initiatives between our two countries.
Only last year, when I was here, my Prime Minister and your President were co-chairing the Global Disability Summit, for example, and opened this. And I think this is a very, very important meeting, you know, advocating for the right of disabled people globally. And we had here a reception, there were meetings all over the place, and it was very engaging. So that is one area. And another area where the two of them invited, actually, I think, to the first, also the first global dialogue on non-communicable diseases. This is something that the two heads of state tried to, in a way, address when they invited to this first global summit. And that is something else I was very proud of. And we had a big event at the Kempinski to launch that. Both of them, Nana Akufo-Addo and Prime Minister Støre, are also together on the high-level panel on the blue economy. And they meet regularly in that. So there are a lot of things.
There is an upcoming summit.
Yes.
I think I had the opportunity to see the artwork, and I saw you on the artwork.
Yes. There is an upcoming summit here in Accra in June, and we are very proud and happy to sponsor that. And now you bring me on to other high-level events, and in fact, we haven't touched about the security.
No, we haven't. We did maritime, but we haven't delved into security. The collaboration between the Norwegian government and the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, for instance, which I know is funded or sponsored by the Norwegian government.
Yes, for many, many years, Norway has sponsored and supported that as, in fact, the only core donor. And the KAIPTEC, or KAIPTC, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, as you said, is the center of excellence for training for peace in West Africa, ECOWAS Center. So Norway is a partner there, and has been for a long time. And we have also, and this is something I would like to mention, because Norway is not a member of the Security Council now, but for the past year we were sitting together also as non-permanent members of the Security Council. And what we did then is that we did together, we were Norway and Ghana in New York, but of course also in capitals and here in Accra, engaged in a resolution on maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea, which is the first resolution addressing that specific problem in more than 10 years, if my memory serves me correctly. So that is something that we have done together. And I think that Ghana is, in a way, an important actor internationally in terms of peace and security. And when the president was chairing, you know, the ECOWAS summit, and well, he was the president of ECOWAS for a period until very recently, when there was a lot of security challenges in the region, and Ghana really stood up and spoke very clearly in favor of democracy regionally and the importance of, you know, preserving those values in a difficult time. And Ghana is now hosting also in December the first peacekeeping ministerial on African soil, which is a huge undertaking. And this is also something that Norway has committed, and we are undertaking to support also financially that initiative. So there is a lot to be said. So our relationship really, I think, covers a very wide spectrum. Security, as I mentioned now, the maritime field, the agricultural sector,
health,
women farming, health. So yes, it is.
There's a lot going on between our two countries. Let's touch a bit on the blue economy.
Yes.
What does it even mean when we say the blue economy?
Well, the blue economy is, in a way, I think, fully understanding what the oceans can mean for us economically, as a sustainable, both exploiting the ocean's resources, and also in a way protecting the oceans. We know the problems of plastic pollution and how we as humans have in a way protect at the same time
the ocean
resources. And of course Ghana has had some very very good policy in place to protect the fish stocks, for example. So all of this is part of a global consciousness of our need together to put our forces in order to both protect but also to reap the full benefits of oceans as probably one of the big responses to food insecurity in the future. So this is part of the panel, and there are expert papers on every topic on the world. But for us, for example, marine pollution is very important.
It's very important, exactly. So that's the blue economy for you. All right, and that's happening very soon. I think towards the end of May to I think the beginning of June. Now we are wrapping up. Let's talk about the upcoming Constitution Day, which is on the 17th of May.
Yes, it's on the 17th of May, which is the Norwegian Constitution Day, because we celebrate that we got our constitution in 1814 on the 17th of May. So the Norwegian Constitution is actually one of the oldest constitutions that is still valid today, more than 200 years old. So yes, that's what we're celebrating on the 17th, and we are inviting a lot of our friends, diplomatic, civil society, artists, journalists. I'm sure you'll be on the guest list.
We will be there.
Of course, I do look forward to that. It's always an opportunity to showcase our commitments and our friendship with Ghana, and we always have our national anthems where we talk about our priorities and why we value the friendship. So it's very important. And we haven't really, this is something I felt maybe we should talk about in the beginning, but I said that I've been on different postings, right?
Right.
But, and the Caribbean was a lovely spot to be as well, and there is a lot of similarities somehow and friendships, musical connections between, for example, Jamaica, the Caribbean and West Africa in general. But I have been met with a lot of, friendship and warmth here in Ghana. So it's so far the big highlight. It's been great. And I, as you know, I have a keen interest in music, and this is something that goes from, I've always loved and got interest in the music where I live. So I play different musics in different countries. And here now I have got, Manifest, Stoneboy, Sarkodie,
I was just coming to your playlist.
All of them.
Manoji, Stoneboy. Manoji is an Ewe language.
Yes, I
it's
know.
It's an Ewe expression. Right. I follow you. Like I said, I follow you very keenly on Twitter, and you shared your love for that particular music.
Yes, I do.
So
he's on my playlist. And, I'm very impressed also by his social engagement, his Stoneboy's engagement, for change, against galamsey, against environment pollution, all these things. So, but as I said, I don't mind listening to Black Sheriff. It's a wonderful talent, to Manifest, to Sarkodie, to all of the legends. So I'm playing Ghanaian music all the time.
Yes. Since we are talking about music and arts, let's talk about the music and arts industry in Norway. How is it? What happens there? I'm just curious. I would have loved to see some collaborations between some Norwegian musicians or the movie industry and Ghana. Is it something that you are considering, or since you have so much love for music and your music?
It is, of course, something that I'm thinking about, and that I hope that during my time here in Ghana would be able to do something concretely on. I had some young artists coming into the residence a month ago for an exhibition that was widely visited, and the residence was open. 500 people came in. Many of them have never been to an exhibition before and not to a residence. It was really a delightful experience, and it's something I would like to do more often. And then it's connecting Norway and Ghana, of course. And Norway has a huge contemporary art scene. Oslo is really developing into a very interesting place for the arts, with a lot of both new museums, new galleries. So I think there would be opportunities, and there is definitely interest for African art in general and Ghanaian art specifically in Europe and in Norway. So, well, we can see.
Let's see how it goes, right?
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about your love for jollof. Let's talk about your love. I mean, food is part of tourism. Which would take my next question will take us to tourism. What is happening in this area when it comes to the relationship between Norway and Ghana. So let's talk about your love for jollof, and then we can talk about tourism.
Oh,
yeah. I saw a picture of you dishing out, jollof to your staff, and I said, this is pretty much interesting. I like to find out. Is that one of your favorite Ghanaian dishes?
Jollof is, yes. Jollof, I think, and red would be probably I've tasted a lot of different things. A lot of it is slightly too hot for a Norwegian, that we are eating boiled potatoes mostly, without spices. But yes, jollof and red I enjoy very much. I've tried a lot of other dishes as well. Of course, you have to try the kenki and the fufu,
the pepper and all of that. Right.
So, but what is really striking, I think, with Ghana and Ghanaians is how much they love their food. And you talk about it.
Yes.
Everybody talks about it. So we do that from time to time in the embassy. We have like a lunch together, all of the staff, and we have food. This particular event was jollof. So maybe next time will be something else.
You're right. Yeah. So that's
but
nice.
I'm covering different countries.
Yes, so
exactly.
We are not going to talk about the jollof war at all, because we know we are winning, so we don't even have to talk. Ghana is winning, we don't even have to talk about this. But let's talk about tourism. Let's talk about the potential in tourism. What do you see in Ghana and the best practices for both countries?
Well, I haven't thought much about that in terms of best practices.
But have you been around a lot?
Yes, I have been. Ghana has a lot to offer, obviously a lot to offer, and a lot of history to offer. And you only need to go, to Elmina or to Cape Coast, to the Volta region, to visit Osu Castle here. I've been to quite a few places. I know I've been to Tamale, to Walewale, to Kumasi, to all of, I haven't been to all the regions yet, but I hope so. One of the places I would want to go is to north of Tamale, to the mosque, and to Mole National Park.
Yeah.
That's might be my next adventure. But I think that there is a lot of interesting places for tourists, and even for Norwegian tourists in Ghana. And that is something also to work on. Yes, Norway has also a lot of natural beauty and history, and we also get tourists to Norway. And we do have quite a lot of Ghanaians interested also in going to see Norway, which I'm very happy about. So let's hope to see more Norwegians coming to Ghana. I'm definitely at least doing my part to attract Norwegians to Ghana.
Right. You are definitely doing your part, and that's one of your responsibilities.
It is.
Yes, of course. So this has been very much exciting. We are super excited to finally host you on Diplomatic Affairs. Final words.
I've been here for a year and a half now. I've got 2.5 years more to go.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of things that I have a lot of, dreams and ambitions, and I wish to see this relationship growing even stronger, to see more investment, and that we can contribute to the vision of Ghana Beyond Aid, as you alluded to earlier, and leave as an ambassador of my country a little, mark the relationship in a good way.
Right.
I guess that's what I hope to do. And then, of course, wishing all the best to Ghana.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency,
Thank you
for your
very
time.
much.
We really appreciate this
Well,
moment
thank you for
with
your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so of course, today, like I said earlier, the focus has been on Norway-Ghana relations, learning more about the diplomatic ties, that exist between Norway and Ghana, and of course, the various areas of collaboration. We've talked about agriculture, food security, very important. We've talked about health. We've talked about healthcare. We've talked about women empowerment, and of course discuss climate change. And you know that the Blue Economy Summit is happening very, very soon. And of course we learned about the No Fund, yes, which is here, and of course supporting businesses in the private sector. Of course, I'm super excited about that. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your time once again. This is where we wrap up on today's episode of Diplomatic Affairs. My name is Harriet Mate, and we look forward to seeing you same time next week. Enjoy the rest of the programs.